So happy. I'm so happy to introduce our speaker today. We have Shari Shelton, who is an educator and analyst at Oregon Health and Sciences University. Shari has a master's in communication and another in educational technology. She's a member of Congregation Kola Me in Vancouver, Washington, and is a WRJ Pacific District Area Director. She and her husband have 2 adult children, and they live on a blueberry farm.
That's right. We have lots of berries right now. So if you live in the Pacific Northwest, our fields are full. So we'd be happy to have you come pick and buy berries. So the first thing we're going to do is start with a little poll, and Melissa's going to pop that up for us. Because we have such a small group today, I'm going to make this even more interactive. So I am going to ask you guys, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. But if you also feel like you want to, you can just kind of speak up and ask a question, because we have such a nice small group here. And so let's start with the chat, and there's going to be some times where I'm going to say, who wants to chime in on this. So Melissa, do we have our poll up?
Shari, my poll disappeared.
Okay.
So
here's what we're gonna do. I can see you all in my little window. And so my question, our poll question is really, who has been to a PowerPoint presentation where they lost interest in watching and they just kind of started playing on their phone or something else? There we go. Me. A lot of people. I can see you all doing that. And that's, that's a big deal with getting presentations. And so you can see here, I have something up here that says, you can see that this happens to everybody. If you're interested in PowerPoint, PowerPoint stands. Duarte is an organization that has done a lot of research on this, and they have some pretty interesting information about it. But, we've all been there, and you start picking up your phone, you're talking to the person next to you, and you've lost your audience. So the goal of my presentation today is really to give you guys some tips on making a presentation that people want to pay attention to. So I feel like there's really 3 important parts of a presentation. One is the information. What are you telling the folks? Is what you're telling them what they need to hear, what they want to hear, or what they're excited to hear? Okay, so really we're talking about focusing the information for the audience that you're doing. The other thing is the visuals. I am big on visuals. It's important to me that the screen be captivating and interesting, and also explain what I'm saying, and have that kind of thing where somebody's looking at it and going, that's cool, and not looking at it and getting overwhelmed. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And the other part is the presentation. And what I mean by presentation is not the PowerPoint and all this stuff. I mean, it's how you're presenting. It's you, right? You are the presentation. It is, especially if you're in a room with folks, it's how you interact. One of my rules is, if you have the opportunity to have, a remote to change your slides, or you have somebody else to do that you're not standing behind a desk, standing behind a podium. You're walking out in the audience, you're moving around, you're engaging with folks, because you are part of that presentation. And somebody standing behind a podium just speaking like this, we're already 3 steps behind in the interest category. You're talking to the people in the audience. You want to talk to them as well. Even though you've got slides going up, you're still trying to communicate, with them. Okay. So there's a lot of things. We're going to talk about a lot of bad things on slides, and then we're going to talk about some good ways to do this as well. So the 3-second rule is something other folks use. I kind of use, it's like looking at a slide and telling us, if you can see in 3 seconds what I'm trying to tell you. So I'm going to put a slide up. I'm going to give you 3 seconds, and I'm going to take it away. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. You guys can unmute. Anybody know what that slide was about?
No, it took me the 3 seconds to read the titles. I don't even know what they were.
Yeah,
Couldn't read the content at all.
I don't know what it was either. I made it.
Yeah.
There was too much going on, right? There was too much going on. And that's a big deal. When we're looking at the slide and we're trying to figure out what's going on. What are we not doing?
Paying
Paying
attention.
attention to what the person is saying. Okay. So if there's too much stuff happening there, they're not going to get it. And there's nothing wrong with breaking it down into other slides. So really making, sure that your slide is sending the message. Now, okay, here's a good one. How many of you guys have seen a slide that looks like this? Do we want a slide that looks like this? Why, if you read the slide, it tells you that you don't want to read this slide. I slide about not reading a slide.
No, too much to read.
Too much to read. If I have this much information for someone, I'm going to give them a handout after the presentation. If there's really this important information that is super important that I need to give you, sometimes it's a policy document. Sometimes it's the steps to do something that we've been talking about. I'm going to send you home with a handout or a PDF that you can revert back to this, but I don't want this. I was in a meeting about this the other day at work with our director of equity and diversity, and his stuff is so interesting, but there was so much stuff on the slide. It was so distracting from this wonderful message he was telling us. So think about, because you're doing a PowerPoint, even if you're on Zoom, your slide doesn't have to show everything that you want to tell everybody, right? That is not what we want our slides to be. Okay, Wendy, do we have the next one? Okay, so let's throw this one up here. I'm going to answer it too. So just answer that one really quickly. And then when we get those results, we'll pop that up there. And I think that, when we're going to talk about good examples, bad examples, and everybody knows what the bad examples are. And my goal today is to help you focus on some of the really good examples. Do we have an answer yet, Melissa? Here we go. Some of you did, some of you didn't. And as you were reading it, you saw why. You're reading it, you can't pay attention to me. So this is what, as soon as you saw that, you knew that was not what we wanted to do. So every slide should really have one main idea, one thought, one focus that we're trying to get across to the person. I want you to notice that in the slides that I've been doing so far, I have a lot of white space and I have some nice visuals. I like these kind of visuals. This, it doesn't mean you have to have as much white space, and I won't in all of them, but find something that's captivating. I think this is a beautiful graphic. I steal a lot of graphics from the internet. Okay. Google stuff. You will see the things that are free. There's beautiful images out there. Make your presentations pretty, make them appealing. People are looking at them. They want to look at them, right? We want things to be visually interesting as well as interesting in terms of the topics. So let's talk a little bit more about visuals. When I show you this slide, I'd like you guys to come off mute and tell me what you think I'm trying to tell you. What am I trying to tell you in this slide?
Women are a positive, strong nature.
Yeah.
Women
Women are diverse. They're strong, powerful. They can do it.
Through history they have
Through
been.
history, yes.
Okay, so yes and no. We've got a variety of different things. We've got women in the military. We've got all the Rosie the Riveter, the stuff that happened in World War II. We can do it. We've got girl power. We've got voting. We've got wonderfully diverse women who are making a change in our world right now. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of messages. It's not clear. And also, my visuals don't. Now, every slide in your presentation doesn't have to match in visuals. It's just naturally not going to work that way unless you're an artist making them. But I've got cartoons. I've got old pictures. I've got new pictures. I'm personally not a huge fan of a slide where all the visuals look like they came from something else, from a different thing. Like somebody cut these all out of a magazine, you know, when we were kids and we'd make magazine collages. So I like to find kind of a theme. So I'm going to do another slide for you, and then let's see if we can get a clearer message for us. So in this slide, as you're looking at this, what do you think the message of this slide is now?
How women organize to get the vote.
Yes,
Women to get the vote out.
yes.
Women to organize just women's movements, right? So some of it over time. Look at, we've got an age procession. It's clear that the focus of all of this is women protesting and women getting together and women working together. They're all black and white. They all look, you know, they have a similar look and feel. This slide is much more visually appealing, and it comes across with a stronger, cleaner message, right? The other one had a lot going on. So when you're looking at your slides and you're creating them, take a look. If you can figure out really clearly what it is, that's great. You've built it, you know, but you want somebody else to look at it. You'll say, hey, what is this slide? Now, if you guys had all said 6 different things, I would have gone, well, I didn't do this one very well, right? But that first slide, there were a lot of different things happening, and you guys mentioned all of them. So we want to make sure that we have kind of one idea and one point. Okay, let's talk more about visuals. What do you guys notice when you look at this picture? Not there's a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff on there, but is there something else odd about this picture? Can anybody pick it up?
The commercial in the middle there, the main commercial, it looks like about weather, but that commercial picture doesn't make sense.
Let's look at less specific about that, but do you notice anything about this?
You can't see their faces.
Well, this is interesting because maybe you guys would get used to this from seeing this picture is distorted.
Oh,
Mm.
It's not how it really looks. It's squished, right?
yeah.
How many times have you seen a slide where the picture is distorted? Okay, there's a really easy way not to do that. I'm going to show you at the end. We have some how-tos, like how do you not make your pictures distorted when you want to change the size? And what happens is when folks are dragging a picture, you know, you're dragging the corner of the picture to make it bigger or smaller. If you don't have a certain couple settings or a little keyboard trick, your picture gets funky. And we've seen people's faces funky and information funky. So this one, maybe I'll make it a little worse example of people getting squished, but that's another piece. And so we want to make sure that our pictures are not, you know, we're not changing how they really look by not setting their dimensions correctly. Okay. Now this one, photos should tell a story. We should be getting something from the picture. What do you guys get from this one? What is this slide telling me? What's it about?
It's about a mother with too many things going on. There's meal, she's texting or something. She's got the baby, she's got papers.
Maybe mom's working from home and trying to manage baby and work.
Exactly. It's actually a calculator. You can see it's a calculator. She's got papers and she's working. So she's either doing her job from home or doing something like her taxes or her budget. So it's it's about working moms and all the things that moms have to do. And whether working moms means you have an outside job or you have a job of running the home, that's a job. So this is really, it's a very clear message of a woman trying to do a lot of stuff at once, and which we all clearly understand. This slide is giving us a very clear message. Okay. So another thing about visuals is that we want things to be consistent. What's not consistent about this slide?
Different fonts.
A lot of different fonts, right? I try to keep my fonts to 2 on a slide unless I'm doing something a little crazy or fun. It's not consistent. It draws your eye in weird ways to say, what am I doing? What should I be looking at? You know, when I look at this green font in the middle is all I get drawn to. It's kind of a funny font. I don't read this one because I'm looking at this one. I've got different colors. So consistency makes your slides really easy. to look at and just to kind of get the information to comprehend. We want folks to comprehend. I'm also going to talk at the end a little about templates, which can really help you with slide consistency. So what happens when you don't have consistency is that things move around. Now I'm gonna bug you guys a little bit with those because I'm gonna go back and forth between this slide. Okay. How many times have we seen somebody laughed? But the header, see how I keep it consistent? If things aren't aligned, you get this funny jumping when you go from slide to slide, and it's distracting, right? It's super easy to make sure that all your titles are in the same spot. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well, because nobody likes to see this kind of like, maybe it's a wake up. Maybe I'm saying, wake up, ladies, pay attention. But that's another way that we're distracting things. We're keeping them distracted from our message that we're trying to get across. Okay. Another part of a good PowerPoint is the fonts that you use, and fonts tell a story. So I have a bunch of different fonts up here, and you can see that if you're doing a business something, if you're doing, if I were doing something on a serious topic, something about COVID or something about the immigration issue or the homeless, right? I'm going to pick a font that's more one of these trustworthy. I'm probably not going to choose this in the fun section to do a presentation on the homeless, right? So, but if I'm doing something, on some of like a fun program thing we're having, or a kids program, the fun stuff is great. Each of these fonts has kind of a feel to it. Strong, powerful fonts send a message. If I said something in one of these powerful fonts that was something I was trying to get like somebody to do, like, you have to do this. Well, that's really sending me a message in this. It kind of puts an emphasis on the words that you're doing in that feel. There's friendly fonts that are just more nice to see, and for things that we're doing that are happy and fun, and of course, fun now. I don't want to upset anybody in the room, but who knows the name of this font down at the bottom that I wrote unprofessional?
Comic Sans.
Comic Sans. Okay, Comic Sans. If you're sending an invitation to a backyard barbecue, go ahead and use Comic Sans. I'm just going to tell you, I don't mean to offend anybody. Do not use it on a resume. Do not use it in your email signature if you are trying to present a professional tone. There is no font in the history of fonts that is more, I will just say, trashed. Who says it? Flow? No, Flow. So it's a great font for writing a letter to your friends.
Exactly.
But if you were doing a resume, if you're doing something for sisterhood where you were representing yourself as a member of sisterhood, for me as the area director, that Comic Sans is not just unprofessional. I hate to say it, it's kind of a joke in the business world. I cannot tell you how many times people, oh my God, I got a resume in Comic Sans, or somebody has their signature. It just doesn't come across as professional. There are a lot of really nice fonts that are clean and bright. I think this one is Sensory Gothic. It's the one I'm using that are clean and open, but a little more professional. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for it, or there isn't a place for these fun fonts. I love fun fonts. I love them in different places, but Comic Sans should not be used in a work environment. That's just a thing. But you can see that they all have different messages, and they all kind of send a different tone. Okay, word art. So, Flo, do you use word art too?
No. It's not worth the effort.
It's not worth the effort, but there are some times, and we're doing an event at my synagogue that's called the Cruise and Schmooze. And I have this fun old car in the graphic, and I have the word Cruise and Schmooze go around it in an arc. That's fine. It's legible. I don't have shadows. I don't have textures. It's not distorted, right? So shaping things around things, we have, you've seen words that are in an arc or in a circle. That is fine. But on your computer, there's this thing called word art and it 3Ds it. And I have some more example. It's just hard to read. It's just hard to read. This is not super clear to read. Okay. Now, this is some pieces from an actual presentation. I work in healthcare. Many of you might know when you go see the doctor, they document on their computer. Over 50% of all providers use something called Epic. That's one of the tools that we use. So this was a presentation that I saw from another healthcare organization. And I want to talk to you about what you notice about this font. It's not a bad font, but what's the problem that I'm seeing with this particular font in this
It's
situation?
all squished together, so it makes it hard to read.
Exactly. Look at this assessment. That's like it really hard squished together. I don't know if this is COVID. Looks like it's supposed to be COVID, but it looks to me like COMD. Like, what is it? I have no idea what this says between COVID and training. I cannot find out what this is. Is it HF, HA? I don't know what it is, right? So make sure that the fonts use the spacing. Somebody said spacing. And really what the term is, you don't need to remember these terms, but the term between the spaces and letters is called kerning. And so sometimes we kern and things get too close together, and that's when it becomes hard to read. In this case, they've also made it italic, and that also makes it difficult to read. So all of these things are really, it's an easy problem to solve by doing one particular thing after you make your presentation. And that is what? Asking somebody else to look at it. Really easy. Ask your partner, ask one of your, children.
Change the font. Highlight it all. Don't make it italic. Pick a different font that has a better spacing to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can't, when you are making something, you get attached to stuff. And so have another pair of eyes look at it. Say, what am I trying to say? Can you read this? Right? And this is all of these things that all my examples that I'm showing you are all things that come from real slides, right? So we've all seen these kinds of things. What I'm also trying to get you today is not only just make it clear and legible, but to be able to have fun and have your slides have an energy to them. And that's really important to me. Okay. Charts and graphs. We use charts and graphs. I work in data. We use charts and graphs all the time. You guys have seen a million charts and graphs. That's too much on the screen. I want to send you a message. I want to give you some information. A table with numbers is not necessarily the best way, but maybe I have something I really want to tell you. So this is a sort of okay version of a chart or a graph. This is actually, I just ran a quick little report. This is the number at my hospital, the number of emergency room visits by age in the last 6 months. Okay. Wow. And so there's a couple things that you can see here. You can see I've got my months over here. I've got color. You can see the color. So we can see clearly, we can see that pink is the most, right? And the pink is 27 to 54. This is a lot of text in one place. I mean, the good things about this slide are that you can clearly see that there are two groups that are going to the emergency room more, right? We can see whoever the pink group is and whoever the blue group is are really in the ED more. That's very clear. I think we all can see that. What isn't as clear is who are the pink group and who are the blue group, right? It's harder to tell who they are, but when I'm just looking at this, I'm getting the message, wow, somebody's spending, there's a group of patients that are spending a lot of time in the ED. Finding out who they are is the harder part. So charts and graphs come in a variety of ways, and you can look at them there's so many options. Here's a little bit better option for this graph, right? I can tell you by looking at this. Here's my numbers, really big, easily legible. Anybody can see on the screen what my colors mean. I've made it nice and big so we can see. I've done this over time. So instead of having, when we go back to here, I've got a lot of things to look at. I'm looking at it by month with the bar graph, and there's a lot to keep to keep track of. Looking at it over time. Because my graph is focused on information over time, a line graph is a really great way to do that. This is what's happening over time. Imagine this, I've got this ED visits, but imagine this is like membership events. Oh, this is a listing of event attendance at my sisterhood by age group. And I could see that, you could do this with your younger and see how many people come across, but it's very easy to see what group is the most, what group is the least, and how their numbers are changing over time. So I'm a big charts and graph person. A lot of what I do is help folks take their data and make it visualized so that people can, look at it and see. But it's got to be the right one. It's got to be the one that tells the story of your data, and they have to be able to look at it and know what it means. So I can knowing what my colors mean is super important. So make sure that somebody else can look at the graph and get it besides the person who has made it. Does that make sense? The difference between all three of those? Right. Okay, great. Okay. That was a transition. That was a transition between slides. It was really fun. It's called origami. Is it relevant in my presentation? Yeah, because I'm talking about slides and things working well and not. If I was really doing a business presentation, would I want my last slide to fold up into a swan and fly away? If I was doing storytelling for kids online, fabulous, right? They have to meet what it is. And one thing about transitions, which is moving between slides, and animations, which are, you can see what's happening on my screen here. We have animations, bring the text and the pictures into each slide. Whoops, I've got another one. We go back for a second, and people get really excited about these, but they can be really distracting. I love to do things. If any of you were in the programming one with Wendy and I, she had a list of 10 items, and one by one, we just added the things to the slide. I didn't have to make 10 slides, so we put number 1 on the slide, then we slowly and gently brought up number 2 and number 3, and it made sense. We were adding things to a list, right? Sometimes a transition from one to another is great. I do like to use them, but when you use them too much, it's just distracting. It takes away from what it is that you're actually trying to say and what it is that you're actually doing in your presentation. So just an informal poll of hands. How many of you guys have seen a slide presentation where every slide is like a fancy swipe slide thing, and you've said to yourself, like, enough is enough? I have. Anybody else? Yeah. So they're great. Use them wisely. Use them in a way that makes sense into your session, because again, it's just something that takes away from the message. Bottom line is you want to, your presentation, you want to get the message across, and you want them to be paying attention to you and the message. Now, here's my things about presenting, because I said that, we're talking about the information that we're saying has to be relevant to your audience. We just talked about a whole bunch about visuals, and we're going to go over some good and bad examples in a little bit. But the third part, and to me the most important part, is you. Okay, so you're the presenter. How many times have you guys been to a presentation where the person read exactly what was on the screen? And you noticed, and you're like, they're reading exactly what's on the screen. That's, the presentation should not be the information. Again, we talked about that with so much text. If you're just going to put a slide on and read it, and the next one read it, give them a piece of paper and say, read it and get back to me and let me know what you think, right? It's not what this is for. This is meant to highlight your information, to really bring emotion or some sort of a feeling to the thing you're getting for people to understand it better by visualizing. That's what the visuals are for. They're not for you to read the words. Okay. The other part is don't ignore your audience. When you have someone, and you don't have to do, we're in a nice sized group here, so we have the opportunity to talk. And it's easy for me to say, hey, what do you guys think? If I had 150, I wouldn't have that opportunity to do that with you, but I'm still talking to you, right? There are people, Susan Bass does it wonderfully. When she's doing her presentation, she's talking to you, and she's looking at the chat and noticing. She's not necessarily calling out specifics, but she's saying, oh, there's great stuff going on. And she's noticing that you guys are there, right? It's not just a video that somebody's done there. She's interacting with you and the audience. And that's really important. You're talking to the people. If you're not going to talk to your audience or engage with them, you might as well just record it, practice it, record it. That'll be perfect and clean, and then they can watch the video, right? So things like polls. In that, if you guys were at the Yes Fund and you did that word cloud, have any of you guys done those word clouds before in a meeting? It's fabulous. That particular application called Menti, you can do it on your phone. We use it at work. We used it at work pre-pandemic. We'd be in our division meeting and there might be 100 people in the room, and they'd ask a question and we'd all have it on our phones, and it would, do the word cloud on the screen or something. It's a great idea. All this stuff is free. Everything that we used to pay for online, and a lot of these things like Zoom, so much of this is free now because of the pandemic and folks being home. So find those fun things. The polls, Melissa's been popping up polls for us. They're not hard to do. Use them. It's a great way to pull your audience into your presentation. It's for them. Just don't forget that. So the other part is exactly, if you're not enjoying your presentation, your audience is not going to enjoy your presentation. If you're not passionate and excited about what you're talking about, they're not going to get excited about what you're talking about. We had a session in the presenters, in the program session, one of our sisterhoods, a lovely lady named Candy Fisher presented her program, the program that they did, and it was on love stories. And it was about love stories in the Bible, and then personal love stories of temple members. And she was talking about her grandmother, and we had these beautiful pictures of her grandmother. And you could tell that Candy was really affected by her grandmother's story. You could feel it. I was interested. She told the story about her grandmother who had an arranged marriage, but previously in her life, she had a love match. And until her grandmother's death, which was too young, her old beau they were corresponding with letters. And I'm like getting emotional because she was getting emotional. It was important to her. I felt her emotion. And not everything you're going to talk about. Sometimes you have to do a budget presentation, There's not a whole lot of warmth and that kind of emotion in a budget presentation, but making a lot of money for your sisterhood and then finding cool ways to spend it, or being able to donate something great to a youth fund, or outfit the kitchen with an automatic dishwasher. That's exciting stuff, Make sure that you care about the stuff that you're talking about. And I would say to you, if you're asked to do a presentation on something, and it really isn't something either that you feel comfortable talking about because you feel like you know it, or you're not excited about it, say, is there somebody else who could do the session? Because that's going to come across to your audience. If you don't care about it and you don't like it and you don't know it, they're going to know. Okay, they're going to know. And the other thing is have fun. Okay, how many of you guys, hands up, don't like public speaking? Well, not many. So you guys all are comfortable in front of, I love public speaking. I think it's fun. I think it is, it's a chance to share information and get to know other people. So but if that's not your thing, I'm not saying don't ever do it. I think it's great to learn, and I love working with people to get them started in this kind of stuff, and start small. But it should be fun. You should enjoy giving a presentation, because again, somebody standing in front of a room, talking like this, not looking at anybody, reading right off the screen, that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the audience, and it's not good for you. Okay. Another thing I'm a big fan of, throw a joke in there. I just saw this one. I don't know where, how, why, what I was looking for. And this came up, and it's actually really funny for me because I live on a farm, and we live on a blueberry farm. And I have, my computer's a Dell, and I just thought this was just, this would be my husband because he's not really very computer literate. But throw some humor in there. There's nothing wrong with throwing a joke into something in the middle of your presentation. Everybody loves to laugh, and it breaks up stuff. Even if it's something serious, there's a way to find a joke that's appropriate for the moment. Okay. So we're going to talk about some before and afters. I was looking for images that supported before and after, and I love this because I used to go downtown Portland and work, whether I was in my office or at the hospital or in any of our very clinics, and I always had to dress professionally. And this is pretty much what I wear every day: gray sweats, something now. Even though they can see me, I don't know what it was that we're at home. I can wear a t-shirt that I never would have worn into the office. I can wear on the screen. So I thought this was a funny little thing. So let's talk about some before and afters. And these are all real slide examples. Some I have done the after, and some I've found on the internet. Again, there's great resources for how to do good presentations. And there's also a lot of really good resources for not doing good presentations on the internet. Okay, so this is okay. We're going to do a presentation on the state of our financials. We have a little background in the back that's talking about, it's got some numbers. So we're not meant to read those numbers, right? But it gives me kind of an image. The thing I don't like about this is I find the background to be a little distracting, and I also would like to see a full page rather than, why not make this a little bit bigger? And it's kind of flat with color. Here's another example. This is the same kind of thing where I have a background that I'm not intending to read, but it's giving me the impression of numbers, right? Clearly, I know this is about numbers. It's got a little bit of color. I am a big fan of dark backgrounds with a light font for a powerful image. I think that sends a really powerful image. I don't know that I would do my whole presentation in it, but I think it's great for titles or key messages that folks are going through. And you can make this thing. One thing that I don't see a lot of people do is make slides that have a graphic that's the whole page. For some reason, we put a little picture in it. And sometimes we don't have to. This is really powerful and strong. And if I were coming into a presentation and this was on the screen waiting for me, and then I saw this one on the screen waiting for me, I'd be more interested to hear what's in this one. It already looks stronger and more powerful, a stronger, cleaner message just by that very first intro graphic. Okay. We talked about not putting a bunch of text on the screen, but sometimes there is things we want to put on the screen. And sometimes it's a quote from someone. A lot of times putting a quote from someone, a historic, someone from history, or a quote from, if this is healthcare and you wanted to have a quote from a patient, if it was education and you wanted a quote from a teacher or a student or anything like that, a quote can be important. This one is not the best, it visually, the color is very, the gray and the yellow is like, read me, right? Read me. So I'm pulled right to that yellow, but I'm not really looking at the rest of this as much. It feels like a lot of text and hard to read. I'm going to show you another example of it that is much more suited, one, to the tone of the comment. So this is really talking, you can see this talking about poverty. There's kind of a whole bunch of stuff here, but when I show you this example, wow, my shoulders just dropped when I went from one slide to the next. That gray and the yellow really felt like it was yelling at me. And this doesn't, it's the exact same amount of information, but doesn't it feel like it's half the amount of words, right? And it feels easier to read. It just feels warmer than that other piece. There is more here. Actually, there is more stuff in here, but it's a lot of message. And so this piece here, we lost some of the pieces that didn't matter, and we cleaned it up. We lowered the font. We changed the colors. And this red clearly says to me they're talking about something is more, things that are, it's more important, but it doesn't yell at me like that. This one, that yellow really yells at me. And I remember a funny story when my dad, this was 20 years ago, my dad would email me and everything was in all caps. And I'd say, Dad, why is everything in all caps? He says, because it's easier for me to read. And I'm like, well, we can make the font bigger, but that email, we all know that feeling of like, if you put something, what did you do? So you got an email from your boss or your child or your husband, and it was all in caps and it said, what did you do? We're like, oh crap, what did I do? It feels like we're being yelled at, right? Yeah, and Flo, I agree. This is a light slide. This is a little bit harder. That text is a little light. It's a little, so again, you can go too bold or you could go too light. And so it's really important. Okay, so here's a great example of word art. This is one of those things about why I don't like word art. This again is screaming. So this tone of the font has nothing to do with the message, right? If I were writing, what would I use this font for? Maybe like forest fires or something. I don't know. It's clearly trying to, it's orange and it's bold and it's 3D and it's slanted and it's like, here I am, right? But this is not what this is talking about. And it's hard to read. And then when you put one word art on another word art, again, hard to read. So here's this same information done again, clean, neat, simple, nice big full slide. The color on this slide is great. This is very appealing. And I easily see what this is about. They're talking about a term called hometown democracy. It's very clear, quite a difference between this and this, right? So sometimes it's just easy to see. We've all and so now you're going to be judging everybody's. Good thing this is at the end, because then you would have been judging everybody's presentation. Actually, all the stuff I've seen today has been great, but you want your people to get the message and not be thinking about like, what does that say? Or that's hard to read. That's not what we want them to be thinking. We want them to be thinking, what is hometown democracy? If it's not about democracy, what's it about? Look at these other towns. Are they involved in that? That's what you want them to be thinking when they're looking at this slide, not about the font, okay? So another way to do things is think again about not just using words, but using visuals and sound. So this is a slide that I did a presentation at a conference in Wisconsin a couple years ago about teaching providers how to use their electronic medical records better. And it was a program that I did with a doctor at a hospital that I worked at. And we had done a lot of things to help these providers get better at the computer, because everybody, too many clicks, too much time on the computer, lots of complaints. So great, let's have some classes. We did them in the morning, we did them after clinic, we did them at dinner time with food, we did them, drop in, we did all kinds of different things. We tried a million different things. And the goal was to make it easier for them, to teach them some of the tips and the tricks and the keyboard commands and the shortcuts that they could use to make their documentation quicker and faster. And at the beginning, we got lots of folks. And then over time, people stopped coming. We had less folks, and some folks never came to the classes. So there's a lot of ways in my presentation that I could have said, wow, we started off strong, and then people stopped coming and they said they had to go get home to their kids, or they were too tired, or whatever. But you can say that, but you could also say something like this, in a way like this. So that's crickets. So this is, whoops, the crickets are supposed to go again, and they're not going again. Whoops. I don't know why my crickets aren't going again. So this was my slide. I had a sign up here that said Epic Classes. So here's my classroom. People are outside. It's raining, but nobody came into the classroom, and I had crickets, right? They laughed. I don't know if you guys chuckled. My crowd laughed about that one because they'd all been in the same situation. But we know that the sound, well, we know what crickets means. Crickets means it's silent. Nobody's there, no answers. If I asked you guys a question and everybody just sat there, I'd go, crickets, right? We know what that means. And so having that cricket sound was another way of saying, look, there's nobody at my class, right? So audio. I don't know that folks, how many have you guys ever put audio on a slide? Anyone? No? Even music, you could do something, about, maybe you had a fundraiser or something, and you were really trying to hit a goal, and you got to that goal. And when you get to that, you're showing people in the slide or something you did with that, you could have a great song come up like celebration, celebrate, whatever, something to say like, woohoo, right? Even somebody going, woohoo, those kinds of things send a message. We know what that means, and it's different. It catches your attention. So don't, I think, part of my big line here is don't be afraid to try stuff. Always run it by somebody, see what their impression is. We don't, you don't want to find something that might be weirdly offensive to somebody else, because everything's very, you have to be very careful these days, but try new things. Okay. So here's another slide. This is not a bad slide. Everyone makes, so Lori wants to ask about how we did audio. Okay. So there's a couple things. I put a little audio, you can drop, just like you can drop a picture, you can take an audio file, and you can insert them in, and I can show you this at the end of the presentation. When you can insert an audio file just like you can a photograph. I happen to tie my, the crickets to the animation. So when I went to the previous slide, as soon as I changed the slide, I got the crickets because I told it to go on the click. There it goes. Now it's going and going. It wasn't doing that before, but you can set that up. And if we don't have time at the end to show that specifically, I can certainly show you guys. But audio, any of that stuff, and you can just turn it off and on. If I hadn't set it to go with my animation, I'd see a little speaker and I could just click on it. It's almost like doing a video, but it doesn't give you the whole video thing. It just gives you a little speaker, and then you click on it and your music goes. So, okay, so here's another before and after. This is fine. This is not bad. Everybody makes a presentation at one time or another. But again, this is a little bit better. It's stronger. It's just a stronger message. And I think one of the things that I think folks don't do a lot is put text on a picture, right? So this one is a fine slide. We probably all made a slide that looks something like this. We have the text and we have a picture, but putting the text on a picture, especially a picture like this where the background is blurred and we're not intending to read it, and especially where it's up here in this more solid part, sends it's a great strong message. I wouldn't put white text over this because there's a lot of white in the background and I wouldn't be able to see what the text is, right? So there's a place for all of this. One thing that I can do, I have one more slide on the same one to make this exactly this one a little bit stronger. And I just filled in the screen, and maybe the orientation of my picture doesn't allow me to make it full screen, but just by making the color, this color that's the same in the slide, that white space is less distracting. I like white space in a slide when I have text and visuals, but in this case, the white space isn't doing anything for me. You can see when I go back, Lori, I can see your head shaking. It's a little more distracting. This just looks more cohesive. And PowerPoint has this really cool tool, and I'm going to bet that most of you don't know about this because it's kind of a secret tool. It has what we call a color picker. And if you've ever done any art, if you've ever used any kind of application that's art, it allows you to grab this little color picker and hover over any color on your screen, and then it changes, you can use, it creates that color. So to get this matching up here, I took my color picker, and I'm going to show you that I have some slides on using color picker. It's also how at the beginning of my presentation, I made that long column with our logo, and the backgrounds are the same color. I just said, choose that color. I don't know what the name of that pink was. I don't think I'd be able to create it by trying to match it, but I could just say to the computer, that's the color I want, and it'll do that. So it's really cool. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So this is just a stronger message. Okay, so you're getting ready. You want to do something. You want to make your slides, but maybe you don't think of yourself as an artsy person, or you don't have time to be an artsy person, or maybe there's 3 of you working on the slides, or you're all going to do separate presentations, but you want them to look cohesive. Templates. PowerPoint has beautiful templates that you can use. They have themes, and there's 2 different things in PowerPoint. There's themes and there's templates, and they're 2 different things. So themes are represented by these, and they also, some of them have a little bit of design with them. Some of them are just colors. But what it does, they pick out a color palette for fonts and graphics that go together. So you can see when you look at these here, this one right here with the A's, it's got a color palette that is cohesive and all looks good together. So here's one with a turquoise more background and a purple background. And their artists have said, if you use these fonts in your presentation, it'll all look good together. The colors match, it won't be jarring, right? And the same with templates. And the templates give us not only a background and a color scheme, but it chooses a nice font. And you can see in this one, this is a really pretty attractive font for titles. And then it also gives you a second font that you can use for your words. And one of the things about title fonts and subtitles, this is where I like to use two fonts. I use like not just subtitles, but like the basis of my font of my information is usually one, and my title is usually something different. Title font like this one, which is what we would call a narrow font. It's taller and longer. So in the font world, we would say that's a narrow. It is not the best for like a block of text or a sentence of text. It's just a little bit harder to read. But if I'm looking at it as a title, it's cool and interesting, but I wouldn't want a whole page of it, right? So our title fonts can be a little bit more decorative than our other ones. But templates are really nice. They really give you a beautiful, solid, professional looking presentation. Okay. The other thing that's nice about using a template is it also gives you kind of some setup for your fonts as well. So you can see that this is kind of information on a title slide, and these boxes are there. When you start typing in those boxes, and we can look at that at the end if we have time, when you start typing in those boxes, it puts it in the font that it's selected for this program. And you can always override anything in a template as well. But it gives you, this is telling me right now that I know I'm going to have a specific font and font size picked out for the title. and also for a subtitle. You can see that it gives you kind of layouts, layouts for other choices. You know, if I was going to do text, if I was going to do two images, two graphs. So it's kind of laying stuff out for you. And that's a great way to start if you have not done, if you're not comfortable with starting from a completely white screen and adding all your stuff, try using a template first. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was the picture tool. So we're going to talk about the color, and we're going to talk about the sizing and how things get sized and how we keep things consistently on a screen. When you're in PowerPoint, this picture tool menu doesn't show up until you click on a picture. So you might open up PowerPoint and say, I don't see this, but once I select an image, it's going to start giving me some of the editing tools that I can use for that image. And you can see that I've got drawing tools and I've got colors. And so what I'm going to do in here is my next slide is showing me when I go into the colors. Okay. If I chose the background colors, I can choose my colors. Most of you have probably seen this, but you may not have noticed that down at the bottom, and I've got it bigger over on the left, you can see this thing that's called eyedropper. An eyedropper, once I click on it, it looks like a mouse pointer. I can drag it anywhere in my screen. And if I put it over the color that I want, like I did in that photograph, it sucks up that color. We'll call it that with a little eyedropper. It's like you put it into that thing of paint and you sucked it up, and then I can go put it into anything else. And it will not only change it to that color, but it will also add that color to the palette for me. You can see that in the, I have something that says under recent colors. Those are colors that I have selected either by going to changing something under more colors, which gives me, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, do not worry about it, but it gives me hex colors or RGB colors that I can set, or this eyedropper. So any of those new colors that I've added will show up under my recent colors. Yep, so that's how I did the red fill-in. That's how I did all the fill-ins in this. I went to that photograph of the gentleman doing the presentation. I clicked on eyedropper. I dragged it over as if it was my mouse to that darkest spot. I clicked, and now that color's in my palette, and I can do a fill and select that color and fill it in there. Exactly. It's exactly what happened. And it's a really cool, eyedropper is super cool. I'm a big fan. Okay, so I'm going to go on to my next one. So here's another one. These are my chickens, and I am looking at here distorted. So this might be more what you've seen. This is the real size picture. This is not what chickens look like. This is very scary. If I actually saw, if I saw a chicken that looked like that, it would be a little creepy. And this is not what chickens look like, but it's so easy for people to do this. It's really easy to do it. And it looks weird, but it's really easy not to do it as well. Okay. So we're going to learn how to do that. And that is, there's a couple different ways. The easiest way is with one of the keys on your keyboard. Does anybody know that one? What do? You could do this in Word, in anything. What do you do when you're resizing a picture and you don't want the size to change? You hold down the Shift key on your keyboard. Super easy. Hold down the Shift key, and when you drag the picture, whether it's a photograph or it's a graphic like I've got here, it will keep the dimensions, the proportions, or what we call the aspect ratio. Okay, so it'll keep that together. That's really easy. So in Word doesn't have this piece of locking the aspect ratio, but hold your Shift key, boom, everything's the right size. The other way to do that is in PowerPoint, and sometimes I've noticed when you open a new one, it's defaulted on, and sometimes it's not. So under the format, when you click on a picture, you get this whole picture format. There's something called size. I'm going to talk a little bit about these numbers as well in just a second here. but there's this little arrow. You see this little square with an arrow in any of the menus, and this is in menus in Word. And in case you didn't know that, what it's saying is, hey, there's more tools down here in this section, but you have to click to see them. They're not the ones that everybody uses all the time, so we're hiding them because it's, you know, it's easier just to work without them. But when you want them, here they are. So when I open up the size one, I get this piece here that says format picture. And one of my options is to lock the aspect ratio. And all that means is if my picture was 2 inches by 4 inches, 2 inches wide and 4 inches tall, when I stretch it, the dimensions are going to stay the same. Aspect ratio is a fancy term, but it really, think about it, is I'm not going to distort your picture. Non-distortion ratio, okay? And that's what that means. The other thing about pictures is sometimes when you make them too big, the way the photo was taken, it wasn't intended. What we call the resolution was not big enough to not let it be fuzzy, right? So we've also seen that. So don't stretch your pictures out in a way that they're not clear anymore as well, okay? So this is, I want to talk about this piece in the height and the width here. One of the things that I like to see when I'm doing, if I have a number of pictures in a row. So let's imagine that I had five squares of images in a row, and they were all faces of women. Okay, the last 5 sisterhood presidents that we had, and we had a beautiful little, each of them had a headshot, and we wanted to put them all on a screen in a row. I want all those pictures to be the same size. I don't want one to be bigger. I don't want one to be smaller. The easiest way to do it is to look at your sizing and to match height or width. Sometimes we can't match them all if they're not all perfect squares, but if I'm doing it in a line like this, height is going to be really important. Whether one's a little wider may not be as important, but I want them all to have the same top line and bottom line, right? So they can be in an even line. And so you can set the height to be, all of the height might be 2.37. So every picture, if all my pictures are the same height, when I sit them next to each other, it'll look like they're all in an even row, okay? I'll actually open the application. It looks like we have 10 minutes. I think we can get through this and open the application because I'm almost done with this part, okay? And again, anybody who wants to go over this or wants to sit down and have me look at a presentation or show you how to do the audio or any of those things, I'm so happy to do this. If I can, I'll put it on my headstone, made the world better for PowerPoint viewers. That's going to be my piece. If somebody, if any one of you go out and make a better PowerPoint presentation, then I've done what I needed to do today. Okay. So the other thing that I use all the time are the guides. And that's, again, something that folks may not know is available in PowerPoint. You take your cursor, and I'll open up the site. You take your cursor up into the rulers at the top or the bottom, and you can drag it down and you get these little lines here. And so another way that I like to make sure that everything is in the same spot, if I go to a presentation that the next picture is in the same spot, I use my guides, and then I just line my picture up to those guides. It's like you drew a mirror on your, you drew a pencil mark on your screen, and then you just put everything in there. So one is to use the guides. That's one way to get things in the same place. Another thing is you also have this, you have the height and width. So also when you get into the size of your pictures, when you're formatting a picture, you can adjust. I showed you a short version of that up in the toolbar, but when you open this up, you have ways that you can set the height and the width to all be the same. And in number 3, we also have this thing called position. And if you notice, most folks who do PowerPoint are really pretty good at getting their headings in the same space. But if you wanted to put something else in that same spot, you're looking at positioning. And positioning is really just where is it on the screen? And you can make sure that everything is the same distance from the top left corner That's typically where we start when we're doing positioning. We think about things from up here, but this top left corner could be the bottom left corner, it could be the right top corner. You know, you can find any single point on your screen to make sure that everything is in the same, that everything is in the same place. Okay. So on this one, it's also about centering things. So when you have guides and you want things to center, PowerPoint, I wish Word did this because I do a lot of work in Word. Instead of having the ruler go from, in Word, our ruler goes from 0 to 8.5, 8, or 8.5, and then 0 to 11, depending on how you have this. In PowerPoint, 0 is the middle. You may not even notice that when you look at your ruler, 0 is right in the middle. And so if you want to center something, it's really easy to find because you've got 0 right in the middle, and you don't have to go, okay, half of 11.5 is 5. You don't have to think about that. It's right here. So I can put my guide, and I can see that I'm not exactly at 0 in my guide, but you can put your guide where you want it to be. And whenever you click on an image, a photograph, whether it's a screenshot, whether it's some, art that you made, it's text, it'll always give you a circle or a dot in the center. And so you can really easily, just by using your arrow keys on your keyboard, line that right up and to be the center as well. So those guides, there's a lot of tools within the application that help you line everything up to keep that nice, nice consistency. Okay. Bottom line for all of this, that was a lot of information. And I don't expect any one of you to go out there and implement every single thing that I said. If there were 1 or 2 things that really resonated with you, do it. Try something that you've never done before. A full screen photo with words on top. Probably many of you, I'm going to guess that many of you have not done that. Had a full screen like the woman that I had that had Tell a Story, the working mom, that you haven't had a full picture with some text on it. It's really powerful. It's a beautiful, when you look at something like that, it's a very powerful message. Try it. Try 1 or 2 things. The internet is chock full of bad examples and great examples. All you have to do is type in bad PowerPoint. Understand that it's also a rabbit hole, and you'll look up and you'll be laughing and looking at stuff, either laughing because it's so bad or laughing because you've done it yourself. And then you look up and an hour's gone by. But there's lots of great examples. As I said, templates are a great way to make your slides look professional and artsy in a way that isn't distracting. Absolutely, number 1 of all things is have somebody else look at it. Get that feedback. And if it's somebody who knows nothing about what you're presenting, that's even better, because your whole presentation is giving information. And if they don't know it and they can't get it, that's a good sign. If they don't know it and they're captivated and they're interested and they've learned something, that's great. Okay. And the other thing is, everybody starts at the beginning. Everybody is a beginner presenter. Everybody is a beginner PowerPoint maker. Everybody is a beginner at everything before we start it, right? I was sitting there at the Yes Luncheon going, oh, these people have a lifeline. And I'm like, I could start one. I'll start one. It's all about starting at the beginning, right? Even if you do a little bit at a time, every presentation that you do is an opportunity to get a little better. Okay, so we have 4 minutes, and I'm going to ask if you have questions, and I'm also going to get out of this presentation and go into the app. But first, I'm going to ask for questions, and feel free to unmute. I'm going to send you my information. I'll probably add some verbal detail. As you notice, I don't like to put what I'm telling you up on the slide. So I'm going to write this down and I will send it to you guys. Melissa, if you could keep a note of who's in the session, I know it's in, that would be awesome. And if you have a question, just say it out. Anyone?
I saw a lot of people furiously writing and jotting down notes, so I
A
think
lot of notes.
you've captivated. This is so jam-packed with information.
I know, and I'm gonna send, yep, I will absolutely, thank you, Sarah. So one of the things I was showing you was about the format, and I don't see any formatting. This is all grayed out until I select a graphic. And if you saw me select this graphic, now I get my format tools. And so my eyedropper was down here. And so if I wanted to make the background, maybe I wanted to make the background the red. So if you see when I drag it over any of these colors, it's kind of going to grab that. So if I grabbed the blue and then I went into the shape fill, there's that recent color that I just grabbed. And now I could, I'm going to make this one, I'm going to make my shape that blue. So, because when you go into colors, there are colors available in your theme. This theme that you have gives you colors. And if you go to more colors, this is where I was talking about, you can get RGB colors, or sometimes you can get a hex color. But if you want to pick something from the picture that you have, that's where we go down to that eyedropper, which I think is just brilliant. I love that tool.
Sherry, did you see Sarah's comment about fonts, wanting to know info about good and bad ones?
Yep. And what I would say is there's nothing good or bad. I mean, there aren't fonts that are good or bad. They're just used badly or used well in the right situation. So I have a lot of fonts. I've added fonts because I do a variety of different things. So every Microsoft product and every Apple product comes with a list of fonts. What's really lovely is you get to see the font being used when you look at your message. And sometimes fonts are, let's do this. So this will make it even more fun. When I look at this, when I hover over them, it changes so you can see. Let's see if I can make this, trying to see if I can get this so I don't, there we go. Now, if I do this and I change, you guys can actually see the font as it changes. So sometimes you can just look at it and know that's hard to read, but this one, Harlow, if we were doing a casino night or a flapper night or a movie and we were watching, like Last Picture Show, something like this would be fun, right? So I don't want to say that I don't think there's any fonts that are bad or good. I just think they send a message and they need to be the right message for you. Again, I love this. Jokerman is a fun font for, happy birthday or, party. If the word said party and we were doing some sort of a carnival, what a fun font to have as carnival, the name of your carnival or something like that. Things like Lato, which is what I have, is a very clean, clear font. If you want to just send a really consistent, clean message, you can see that in my headers, I didn't do anything fancy in the way that I described, like I had my things, because I didn't want to necessarily, my message was just about doing the PowerPoint. So all of these, Lobster is a fun one. This is a pretty font. Wouldn't this be pretty on a, invitation to a baby shower or a wedding or something like that? This is my favorite thing to do. I spend too much time doing this where I find something and then I hover over it and I look at all the different things. Magneto is a really cool font. I'm trying to find a way to use it because I think it's really interesting, but every time I put it on something, it's hard to read, but I like the way it looks. And there's lots of things that you have in here. I will tell you, if you have a PC, and you can do this on a Mac, it's just super easy on a PC as well. If you have a PC, you can go to the internet and look for free fonts, and then you can download them. And then when you double click, you open them up in the folder that they get downloaded, and they will open up with the little button that just says install, and you just do install. And it's that easy, and they show up in your thing. So all of these just have, they all have different, this one I downloaded these superhero ones, right? for when I was doing the session on the superhero car rally, because I thought these were fun and I was talking about superhero themed stuff. So a superhero themed font seemed fun for that. So that's what I'm saying. And Flo, I don't want to offend you. You don't have to change away from Comic Sans, but if I ever see you send a resume into somebody in that, you're in big trouble. Okay. But you know, that's the thing. Somebody asked about graphics. I go to the internet. This is what I do. I go to Google. Let me share. We're out of time. If you have a second, if you don't, I'm going to share my other screen. You are more than welcome to jump off, but I'm going to show you what I do. When I do.
Sherry, as you're doing that, just want to let people know, through a friendly reminder, we've got the closing session at 2:45, and I put in the link. Hopefully it will work, but you can also get it from the
That's
other.
fabulous. So if I was doing something, and I'm looking for, I was looking for, let's just say I was going to say superhero. I really just write in what I want. I say superhero cartoon, and I go to images in Google, and I've got all these images. And then, you know, when you select one, you can get it right here. Now this one, if you notice, there's these little swirlies behind it. This is, you have to pay for this, right? So it's got this little background that when you copy it, you can see the little slashing. I'm not going to use this one because somebody's saying, I want you to download it and pay for it, right? But if I go to another one, let's maybe this guy. Nope, not that guy. Okay, so these guys, I don't have that background, so I can simply go click on this and say, I could either save the image somewhere, or I could just say copy image. And then I go into my PowerPoint and I paste it. It's going to come in kind of big, and I can resize it. I can crop it. When I double click on it, I want to get this little resize thing. I grab that. Maybe I only want one of these people.
We
Maybe
aren't seeing what you're doing.
No,
not.
no, they
We're
don't.
not seeing anything.
Okay,
We're just
sorry.
seeing
Oh,
the,
I know why, because I shared the
superhero cartoons.
I have to share my screen again. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. I shared the application. Okay. Can we see the picture now? Okay. So all I did was paste it in
Yeah.
here. And now I want to clean it up. I can crop it by dragging this. And maybe I only wanted one of these little people. I like the lady in green. I'm just going to go through and I'm just cropping this. And now I've got her and she can be dragged around. And there's another thing that's really important is about send to back. So this little person right here, there's a white background. And if I put it right here, so maybe I was using this to identify me, I've just cut off some of my email address. But I have these things up here that say bring forward and send backwards. So I can go back and send it to the back. And now it's behind my email. So I can just scoot it right over like this. And now I can see that. There's a lot of things, you know, if folks are interested, we could do a PowerPoint, like be in the application another time with, I can talk to Wendy about doing a district thing. But I'm a big stealer of stuff, you know, I mean, there's stuff that I like to draw. And when I did if you saw the PowerPoint that I did for the presentations, all those little pictures of the boom, pow, you know, happy, the little superhero things I did. I did those by inserting shapes, and I grabbed, you know, there's some things in here that to me kind of look like the little superhero things. And I did this and I added another one and put one behind and added the fonts. And, you know, there's a lot of tools in here. But really, I just want you to make clean, clear PowerPoints that you enjoy presenting and that the people enjoy watching. That's my goal for this today. Okay. Any other questions before I see you guys at closing? Okay, did you guys learn something today?
Yes.
Yay, all right. I'm so happy to hear that. Okay, I like this little girl. Now she might be my new me. I just just found her. All right.
Thank you very much, Shari. This is most informative. Really
You
appreciate
are
it.
so
Thank you.
welcome. And I will see you guys at closing. I hope you've had as much fun this whole weekend as I have.
Mm-hmm.